Unfortunately, every detail of it, I remember.
Surviving a nightmare, she recovered from the brutal attack that killed her husband, only to find out someone they loved was behind it all.
Tonight, almost 5 years later, Mara Skinner is speaking out about it for the first time.
She sat down with our own Anu Prakash for an exclusive interview to talk about what her life is like now and how she's healing and why this nightmare is still in the courts.
5 years ago, I never thought that tomorrow would be okay. I never thought tomorrow would ever be okay.
That's because 5 years ago, on November 12, 2010, Mara Skinner's whole world shattered.
Unfortunately for me, that night is like a movie in my head that plays. And unfortunately, every detail of it, I remember.
She and her husband Paul were asleep when two masked men got in their Yale home and attacked them. Mara was stabbed 26 times. Paul was also stabbed repeatedly. He managed to chase the intruders out of the house, but he died moments later.
He was an ordinary guy that did an extraordinary thing. His thought was not about himself. His thought was to protect his family, and he did.
Stunning everyone, the revelation that the Skinner's daughter, 17-year-old Tia, orchestrated the attacks.
17-year-old Tia Skinner was accused of being the mastermind of a plot to kill her.
So while Tia was in the basement of the family home on the night of the attacks, she knew her boyfriend and his friend were coming to try and kill her parents. In 2011, all three were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I support that. It wasn't for me to decide what the consequence was. It was what the law decided. And what's unfortunate and unfair is that as the law changes, they bring victims back to places that we shouldn't have to go back.
Mara Skinner says that because she and her family have been back in court every year since Tia's original sentencing. It's because in 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court determined juveniles shouldn't be sentenced to life without parole unless certain factors are considered, things like home environment and maturity level. And because the courts and legislators in Michigan have different ideas on how to deal with the high court's ruling, this case continues.
It brings us right back to the crux of what happened, right back to the core. It hurts every time.
And that excruciating process still isn't finished. Right now, the St. Clair County prosecutor is trying to block a fourth sentencing from happening.
To see that process a fourth time and watch the trauma and emotion, I can't imagine doing it. And then to have that hearing in front of a jury, 12 people who don't know anything about the case until we start the case over again, and frankly holding another trial for purposes of sentencing. I'm not sure that we'll be able to do that.
And I think victims get forgotten, and that's what brings me to this point where I'm able to say to you, I was a victim. I don't want to ever be forgotten in terms of being less important than a defendant.
Mara Skinner says she never consciously thinks back to that horrific night, but there are triggers that take her back. She lives with PTSD, but continues counseling that she started very soon after the attacks. Another huge part of her healing is volunteering at the St. Clair County Victims' Rights Office. She says it's her saving grace.
A lot of times I do get to offer some sort of comfort. At least I hope that I understand what they're feeling, and that it's normal, and that we're here to do whatever we can to help them get through this.
When it comes to her daughter Tia, she's not ready to talk about her, but she did tell me this.
Is there still love there? Can there be love there?
Love isn't a light switch. It's not something you can turn on and off.
As for her own life, Mara Skinner says it's the love of her family, friends, and community that helped her survive an unimaginable tragedy. She's remarried now and feels like she's in a good space, one that now allows her to think of tomorrow in a different way. Now
I can tell you that tomorrow's okay. And every day I wake up and, like I said, it's a new day, but it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean it's going to be good or bad, but it's going to be okay. And I'm good with that.
Anu Prakash, 7 Action News.
By the way, this Sunday, Mara and her family will honor Paul Skinner at the first You're My Hero run and walk in Port Huron. A tribute to him and all the heroes in our lives. Proceeds will help crime victims in St. Clair County. We have all the details on how you can participate at WXYZ.com.